Reba looked at him, and for the second time that month, she felt like she might cry. You're a moron, Van. I know, he grinned, but I'm your moron. The Millers walked back in. We've made our decision, Mrs. Miller said. We're going with Hart and Montgomery. Steve Norris sputtered. But they aren't a firm anymore. They are now, Reba said, grabbing Van's arm. And we're taking the drone with us. Chapter 11. The Survivor's Sunset. The Houston heat was starting to break as autumn teased the horizon. The Hart family was gathered in the backyard for a celebratory barbecue. Van was back at the kitchen table, his Hart and Montgomery business cards sitting in a proud stack. Cheyenne was laughing as Elizabeth tried to feed a hot dog to the dog. Kira was playing a demo of her band's new song on a boombox. And even Brock and Barbara Jean had made up, mostly because Stormy Clearweather had decided to retire and become a climate awareness influencer, which involved fewer butt wiggles and more recycled fashion. Reba stood by the grill, flipping burgers and watching the chaos. She thought about the smooth sailing she had craved so much at the beginning of the summer. She realized now that smooth sailing was boring. It was the storms, the rebellions, the frauds, the professional wars, and the midnight suitcase arrivals that made the journey worth taking. She looked at her kids, her ex-husband, her crazy friend, and the son-in-law who had chosen family over a heated seat. Hey, Mom, Cheyenne called out. Are the burgers done? They're getting there, honey, Reba shouted back, just like the rest of us. She took a sip of her iced tea and smiled at the setting sun. The going good blues were gone. There was only the going forward rhythm of a life well lived. She was a single mom who worked too hard. She was a partner who had found her match. She was a survivor. And as the stars began to poke through the Texas sky. Chapter 12. The Drone of Domesticity. The drone, a high-tech piece of surveillance equipment that Steve Norris had intended for filming luxury estates, had found a new, decidedly less professional purpose in the Hart Montgomery household. Van sat on the sofa, a VR headset strapped to his face, his thumbs twitching over the controls. Van, what are you doing? Cheyenne asked, waddling into the living room. Her belly was now a formidable sphere, and she moved with the careful deliberation of someone carrying a bowl of soup that was filled to the absolute brim. I'm monitoring the perimeter, Cheyenne. Van's muffled voice came from beneath the headset. I'm making sure she doesn't eat any more of those suspicious-looking berries. She's with Mom, Van. She's fine. The drone provides a tactical advantage. Look, I just found Henry's lost soldier in the gutter, and... oh, hey, the Johnsons next door are having a really tense conversation about their lawnmower. Reba walked in, holding a screaming Elizabeth. Van, take that thing off. The humming is driving the dog crazy, and I'm pretty sure you're violating several local ordinances and at least one international treaty on privacy. Van pulled off the headset, blinking. You're a professional athlete who is too lazy to walk 30 feet, Reba deadpanned. Truly, the spirit of the Olympian lives on. The drone was just one of the many ways Van was trying to help during the final weeks of Cheyenne's pregnancy. He had become a whirlwind of nervous energy, convinced that every sigh from Cheyenne was the beginning of a 48-hour labor. Chapter 13. Nesting Rage. If Van was nervous, Cheyenne was something else entirely. She had entered the nesting phase, which in Cheyenne's case looked less like building a cozy home and more like a tactical reorganization of the entire zip code. Van, why is the alphabetization of the spice rack inverted? She shouted from the kitchen. I thought it looked more modern that way, Van stammered, hiding behind Reba. We are having a baby, Van. How am I supposed to find the cumin in a crisis if the C is at the back? Reba watched the scene with a mixture of nostalgia and pity. Honey, the last time you used cumin was in 2004, and even then, I'm pretty sure you thought it was a type of fabric. Mom, don't take his side. Everyone is against me. The baby is coming, and we don't have enough organic bamboo swaddles. You have 34 swaddles, Cheyenne. You could swaddle a mid-sized giraffe. The going good blues had returned with a vengeance. Cheyenne was convinced that her karma was still unbalanced, despite the birthday party for Kira. She spent her days apologizing for things she had done in middle school and trying to find a baby name that was cooler than Siri but more grounded than a celestial body. What about North? Cheyenne asked one afternoon. Already taken by a Kardashian, Kira said, looking up from her bass guitar. What about Stormy? Barbara Jean would sue you for copyright infringement, Reba noted. Chapter 14. The Final Countdown. The Houston heat had finally surrendered to a crisp October breeze when the moment arrived. It wasn't a dramatic Hollywood scene with water breaking in a grocery store. It was 3 a.m., and Cheyenne was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal when she felt the first real contraction. "Mom?" she whispered, knocking on Reba's door. Reba was awake instantly. It was a mother's instinct, a frequency she was always tuned into. "Is it time?" "I think so. It feels like a BB hit the Buick, and then the Buick exploded." "Okay." Van, wake up." The house erupted into a familiar, chaotic ballet. Van managed to put his shirt on backward and spent 5 minutes trying to find the go bag, which he had hidden in the garage for security. Kira was strangely calm, already starting the car. "I'm ready," Jake said, stumbling out of his room. "Do I need my basketball?" "No, Jake, we're going to the hospital, not the NBA Finals," Reba shouted. They arrived at the hospital in record time, thanks to Van's shortcut, which involved driving over a curb and through a Starbucks parking lot. In the delivery room, the usual cast of characters assembled. Brock arrived in his golf attire, looking terrified, and Barbara Jean showed up with a labor survival kit that included sage, a bedazzler, and a weather map of the hospital floor. "I'm tingling, Cheyenne," Barbara Jean shouted. "The barometric pressure in this room is perfect for a baby girl." "Get her out of here," Cheyenne moaned, "or I will use this ivy pole as a weapon." Chapter 15. The Arrival. The labor was long, painful, and filled with the kind of biting sarcasm that only the hearts could provide. "I hate you, Van," Cheyenne screamed during a particularly intense contraction. "I know, honey," Van said, tears streaming down his face as he held her hand. "Don't you dare. I want that car." Reba stood at the head of the bed, a steady hand on Cheyenne's shoulder. She was the anchor. She had done this 3 times, and she knew the rhythm of the pain and the miracle that followed. "Focus on me, Cheyenne," Reba whispered. "You're a survivor, just like me." At 10:14 a.m., a new sound filled the room, a sharp, healthy cry that silenced the bickering and the monitors. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. The silence that followed was heavy with awe. Even Barbara Jean was quiet. They placed the tiny, red-faced bundle in Cheyenne's arms. Van was sobbing openly now, his head resting on Cheyenne's shoulder. "She's beautiful," Cheyenne whispered, her anger gone, replaced by a soft, glowing wonder. "She looks like—" "She has my nose," Brock noted, peering over. "Let's hope she doesn't have your sense of direction," Reba joked, though her eyes were wet. They named her Sarah Hart Montgomery. A simple, grounded name. Chapter 16. New Horizons. A week later, the Hart house was filled with the smell of baby powder and the sound of soft lullabies. Reba sat in the rocker in the nursery, holding Sarah. The house was quiet for a moment. Van and Cheyenne were finally sleeping. Jake was at a real basketball practice, and Kira was at a band rehearsal this time, with the bass player staying on his own floor. Reba looked down at the new life in her arms. She thought about the journey from being a heartbroken divorcee to being the matriarch of this sprawling, beautiful, chaotic mess. She wasn't just a single mom anymore. She was the grandmother of a new generation. She was a business owner. She was a partner. The smooth sailing she had once dreamed of seemed so small now. Why would anyone want a calm sea when they could have the thrill of the waves, the strength of the wind, and a crew that would never, ever let them sink? She looked out the window at Vesper Avenue. The sun was setting again. A deep, fiery red. "Welcome to the family, Sarah," Reba whispered. "It's a little bit crazy around here. We're dumber than a sack of stupid sometimes. We fight, we bicker, and we use buttrometers to predict the rain." She kissed the baby's forehead. "But we love each other. And in this house—" Reba leaned back in the chair, the rhythm of the rocker matching the beat of her heart. She was tired, She was overworked, and she was surrounded by idiots, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 17. The Montgomery Minute.